The Hodag, Wisconsin's monster that refused to die. In the deep forests of northern Wisconsin, where winter settles over the trees and the wind moves through the branches like something breathing, there is a creature that should not exist. Its body is low and heavy, built with the strength of an animal designed to survive a world without mercy. Horns rise from its head, sharp spikes run along its back, its claws tear into the earth beneath it, and its eyes, according to the stories, burn with the kind of hunger that makes sensible people reconsider their reasons for entering the woods. They call it the Hodag. For generations, the creature has belonged to the forests surrounding Rhinelander, Wisconsin, a place shaped by lumber camps, isolated roads, brutal winters, and the uncertain boundary between what people know and what they merely suspect. The Hodag was said to be aggressive, dangerous, nearly impossible to kill. Some described it as a combination of several animals, as if the wilderness itself had gathered every threatening feature it could find and assembled them into a single beast. It had horns like an ox, a back armored with spikes, powerful legs, sharp teeth, and a tail capable of doing serious damage. Depending on who told the story, its face resembled a frog, an elephant, a dinosaur, or something no ordinary person could comfortably identify. Its appetite was equally unsettling. The Hodag was said to eat almost anything, although one traditional account claimed it especially enjoyed white bulldogs. Why white bulldogs? Because folklore rarely submits its decisions for review, but the specific details mattered less than the larger idea. Somewhere beyond the familiar roads and cleared land, something waited. And if the stories were true, that something had no particular interest in welcoming visitors. To understand how the Hodag came to life, you have to understand the world that produced it. During the 19th century, the forests of the American Midwest were filled with logging operations. Men entered vast stretches of wilderness to cut timber, move heavy equipment, and survive conditions that could turn deadly without much warning. The work was exhausting. The distances were enormous, and isolation had a way of making every sound feel more significant than it probably was. A branch breaking in the darkness could be a deer, or a bear, or another logger moving between camps. But after enough nights beneath those trees, after enough strange noises and unexplained tracks, the human imagination inevitably began filling in the blanks. Logging camps developed their own storytelling traditions. Workers invented creatures with impossible bodies and ridiculous habits. Some were terrifying, some were funny, some were designed specifically to make inexperienced newcomers look over their shoulders. These animals became known as fearsome critters. They were the unofficial wildlife of the lumberjack imagination. There were creatures shaped by tall tales, practical jokes, regional pride, and the simple need to make long nights more interesting. The Hodag emerged from that tradition. But unlike many campfire inventions, it did not remain trapped inside a conversation. It found a public, and it found a man willing to give the monster something most legends never receive: evidence. His name was Eugene Shepard. Shepard was a Wisconsin timber cruiser and a well-known storyteller with a talent for recognizing what people wanted from a good mystery. In the late 19th century, he began promoting an extraordinary claim. A terrible creature had been discovered in the forests near Rhinelander. Not a bear, not a wolf, not any animal recognized by science. This was something else entirely. According to the story, the creature was so dangerous that ordinary weapons were not enough to bring it down. A hunting party pursued it. The encounter turned violent, and eventually, the monster was destroyed with dynamite. That alone would have made a memorable piece of local entertainment. But Shepard understood that a story becomes far more powerful when someone claims to have physical proof. A photograph appeared, showing a group of men gathered around the remains of the supposed beast. The animal looked bizarre. Its body appeared dark and heavy. Its back carried sharp projections. Its head featured prominent horns. It resembled something dragged out of a nightmare and posed for a hunting portrait. The image gave the legend a new kind of credibility. People could argue about what they were seeing. They could question the details. They could wonder whether the creature had been exaggerated, but they could not ignore the fact that someone was presenting a visible object and calling it a Hodag. That changed everything. A campfire story asks you to imagine. A photograph asks you to explain. And when people cannot immediately explain what they see, imagination steps back into the room wearing a different disguise. The legend spread. Newspapers repeated the account. Curious observers discussed the monster. Rhinelander suddenly had something larger than an ordinary local story. It had a mystery, but Shepard was not finished. He later claimed that another Hodag had been captured alive. This creature, according to the story, had been taken from its hiding place and brought into captivity. Now the public could do more than inspect a photograph. They could see the monster for themselves. The living Hodag was displayed for paying visitors. People approached the enclosure expecting a dangerous animal. They saw a horned, spiked creature resting in the shadows, and when it moved, the experience became considerably more convincing. The beast growled. It shifted. Its body appeared to respond to the people standing nearby, for visitors already prepared to believe they were facing an unknown animal. Those movements filled in the remaining gaps. Fear does not require perfect evidence. It only requires enough uncertainty to make disbelief feel risky. Of course, the living Hodag was not alive. Its movements were reportedly created through concealed mechanisms and human assistance. The creature itself was an elaborate construction. The first supposed carcass was not the remains of a newly discovered species. The captured monster was not a biological mystery. The entire affair belonged to the long American tradition of showmanship, spectacle, exaggeration, and expertly managed deception. Eventually, serious scrutiny made the truth increasingly difficult to avoid. The Hodag was exposed as a hoax, and under ordinary circumstances, that should have been the end of the story. The monster should have disappeared. Its creator should have been remembered as a practical joker. The photographs should have become curiosities. The public should have moved on. But that is not what happened, because the Hodag had already become more than an argument about whether a strange animal lived in the forest. It had become a story people enjoyed telling. It belonged to a particular landscape. It reflected the humor and imagination of logging culture. It gave Rhinelander a creature that existed nowhere else in quite the same way. The revelation that the Hodag was invented did not erase its usefulness. If anything, it clarified what the creature really was. The Hodag was not a zoological discovery. It was a cultural invention. And culture has a way of keeping useful inventions alive long after the original circumstances disappear. The logging camps changed. The forests changed. The people who first heard Shepard's claims passed away, but the Hodag remained. It appeared in local imagery. It became a symbol associated with Rhinelander. Its strange body and recognizable horns gave the community something distinctive. Visitors encountered its likeness. Residents grew up knowing its name. The monster that began as a stunt became part of the region's identity. That transformation raises a question larger than the Hodag itself. What exactly makes a legend authentic? Is authenticity determined by age? Does a story become meaningful only after enough centuries have passed? Does it need an anonymous origin? Must it arrive from a distant civilization, written on stone or preserved through generations of oral tradition? Or can mythology emerge wherever human beings decide that a story is worth keeping? Consider what happened in Wisconsin. A creature was invented. Its appearance was described. Its behavior was explained. Stories formed around its discovery. Physical representations appeared. The public repeated the legend. A community adopted the monster, and later generations inherited the story as part of the place where they lived. Those are not minor details. That is the machinery of myth-making. The Hodag does not become less interesting because we know someone helped construct it. In some ways, it becomes more interesting. We can actually see the process. We can watch an invented creature move from exaggeration to spectacle, from spectacle to local folklore, from folklore to cultural symbol. Most mythological traditions do not give us such a clear view of their beginnings. By the time their stories reach us, Generations have already shaped them. The original motivations may be buried. The first storytellers may be forgotten. Historical events, religious beliefs, political interests, entertainment, and imagination may have blended together until separating them becomes nearly impossible. The Hodag allows us to observe that blending while the fingerprints are still visible. A man invented a monster. A community decided the monster was worth remembering, and remembering changed what the monster meant. That does not make every ancient legend a deliberate hoax. Human beings create sacred stories, cautionary tales, symbolic figures, and supernatural explanations for many different reasons. But the Hodag demonstrates that a story does not need to begin with literal truth to develop genuine cultural power. Fiction can become tradition. A prank can become heritage. A manufactured creature can become the face of a town. And once that happens, asking whether the monster is real becomes more complicated than it first appears. Was there ever a living, breathing Hodag prowling through the Wisconsin forest? There is no credible reason to believe so. But did the Hodag shape the identity of a community? Did it give generations of people a shared symbol? Did it become part of the cultural landscape of northern Wisconsin? Absolutely. The animal was invented. The tradition was not. And maybe that is the real lesson hiding beneath the horns and spikes. Monsters do not always survive because people believe they exist. Sometimes they survive because people recognize themselves in the act of telling the story. The fears, the humor, the landscape, the local pride, the desire to claim that this place, among all the places in the world, has something strange enough to remember. So if you ever find yourself traveling through the northern Wisconsin woods, surrounded by dark trees and long stretches of quiet road, you probably do not need to worry about a horned beast leaping out of the darkness. Probably. But if you hear something moving beyond the tree line and somebody nearby tells you that the Hodag still lives out there, remember this. They proved the Hodag was a hoax. They never managed to prove it was not a legend.